I'm in Thailand in what looks like a botanical garden, but this is actually a cafe. When you think of food in Thailand, you probably think of street stalls and night markets. But the one thing that Thai people are even more obsessed with are cafes. This cafe basically looks like a resort. So I'm outside what's probably the weirdest cafe I've ever been to. These cafes aren't just a place to get coffee, socialize, or relax, by the way. The scene here isn't like what you're gonna find in France, Japan, or America. This place has a misty garden and a waterfall. I'm in Thailand to show you this crazy cafe culture that I honestly haven't found anywhere else. And I want to share this because the culture that exists here is now one of the biggest parts of modern Thai life. These cafes exist to be an experience, but I think that they're also sort of a remedy for something that this country, especially Bangkok, is kind of lacking in. I want to find out how things got this way, how Thailand got so obsessed with cafes within just a few years. And yeah, social media plays a part, but I think there's a much bigger picture here. Something unique to Thailand is fueling cafes here to outpace the rest of the world. Not in coffee, but in spectacle.
ผมไม่สนใจเท่ากับว่าจริงๆมองว่าร้านกาแฟหรือคาเฟ่ร้านหนึ่งเนี่ยมันมีความหมายมากกว่าแค่ตัวร้านเอง
So I'm in this cafe and there's a lot of parakeets all over the place and they're screaming like crazy, so yeah, you're gonna hear that. But before we dive into the world of cafes in Thailand, I want to clarify that not all cafes here are the same. They're not all like this. So I want to categorize cafes in Thailand into two categories: chic cafes and amusement cafes. Chic cafes here are similar to the usual hip, trendy spots that you can find pretty much anywhere. They're usually entirely indoors with some cool designs and they serve lattes. A lot of lattes. But these cafes, though are really beautiful spaces, are not really the ones I want to focus on. Instead, I want to talk about amusement cafes. But what is an amusement cafe? Well, let's go take a look at one. Alright, so we came out here in what is kind of essentially the middle of nowhere to check out this one really cool looking cafe. This cafe pretty much just looks like a resort. Unlike chic cafes, which are trendy spots in the middle of a city, an amusement cafe is something like this. And I think this style of cafe is unique to Thailand, or at least more common here than anywhere else. It took me a while to really grasp the scale and concept of these places. Each of these cafes have something that makes them a little bit different, but I think they all come from the same ideas and purpose. So to understand what makes a cafe an amusement cafe, I found 4 elements that I think all of them have.
ถ้าเปิดร้านกาแฟมันไม่ได้จบที่วงการกาแฟแต่มันไปบวกกับวงการนักออกแบบด้วยวงการครีเอทีฟด้วย
The first element is big outdoor spaces. Just about every amusement cafe has a big outdoor space. How that space is used depends on the cafe. It can be a garden, a pool, or a place to roll a boat. And in these spaces comes the second element, interactive photo spots. These cafes always have a few photo spots, whether it's a random swing, unique architecture, or something else that's aesthetic, but impractical otherwise. I've seen these kind of photo spots in cafes in other countries like Korea, but none of them match the variety that Thailand has. 3, they're outside of cities. You might find some of these cafes on travel sites listed as the most Instagrammable cafes in Bangkok or Chiang Mai, but oftentimes these places actually aren't in the city. Most of these cafes are in the outskirts, in the suburbs, or in the middle of nowhere.
Hey, what's up?
I'm here in Krabi on a side trip, staying by these amazing beaches. And in this area, there's like a random amusement cafe, not by the beaches, but here in the middle of the mountains. And you obviously need a car to get here. And the fourth element, these places have insane menus with all kinds of foods and drinks. In Thailand, despite having an extensive menu, something we would only reserve for restaurants, these places are considered cafes. So this place is a cafe, but the menu here serves stuff like, spaghetti, burgers, and curry, but it of course also has everything, you would expect from a cafe. So in Thailand, these amusement cafes are kind of like treading a gray line between a restaurant and a traditional cafe. These are the four main elements that make up an amusement cafe. But since all of these places are less than 10 years old, these elements may very well change. And that's what makes this whole scene exciting.
เขาบอกว่ากาแฟที่ยุโรปมันอยู่กับวัฒนธรรมเขามาอย่างยาวนานคาเฟ่เขาเจอเขายาวนานมากมันไม่สามารถที่จะสนุกได้มากกว่านี้แล้วในขณะเดียวกันเขามาเจอคาเฟ่เขาเจอแบบฝั่งเอเชียอย่างไทยเนี่ยเขาบอกโอ้โหมันหลากหลายมากนะแล้วมันสนุกมากผมว่าอันนี้มันเป็นคาเฟ่คัลเจอร์แบบพวกเราอะที่มันแตกต่างกับยุโรป
I'm not saying that Thailand definitively has a better or more fun cafe culture than the rest of the world. But a long time ago, I did make a video about how coffee houses in Vienna were losing young people. In Thailand, it feels like the opposite is happening. But also, I think each of these four elements are a response to some unique aspects of Thailand, or at least Southeast Asia in general. Okay, so I do think Bangkok is one of the coolest cities in the world, but man, is it not the best place to walk in. I mean, this city doesn't really have a lot of places to rest. Like, there aren't many parks or squares like you would find in other cities in maybe like Europe. And that's why a nice cafe where you can rest always sounds like a really good idea in the city. One, Thai cities don't have a lot of green space. Like most Southeast Asian cities, Bangkok is almost entirely concrete, with very little parks and public squares. To compare to other cities, about half of Vienna is dedicated to public green spaces. So is 40% of Hong Kong, 33% of London, and 27% of New York. But Bangkok? Just 2%. There's honestly not many places to hide away from big roads or loud traffic. And yeah, the city does have some really nice parks, but it's honestly really not enough to satisfy, the 17 million people who live here. And all of these new cafes with their large open gardens and green spaces are sort of a quick remedy to the lack of greenery in Thai cities. But making green spaces in cafes doesn't mean people will just come, because they have to find out about it. Which leads us to reason number 2. Thailand is obsessed with social media. So I'm outside what's probably the weirdest cafe I've ever been to. It's basically inside a building that's a replica of the Parthenon in Greece. And while there's no green space, it's surrounded by asphalt like this giant sunny parking lot. There is sort of a Christmas themed decoration thing going on just in front of it that is kind of like replicating the kind of aesthetic photo stuff. So yeah, really strange place. Pretty much the world is, but Thai people are crazy about taking photos. Most people here don't just take one photo, by the way. They can literally take half an hour posing for just one shot. Thailand's recently been taken over by a selfie society. Posing for photos is basically a national sport here. And that's not really putting it lightly.
This is the first reason I opened a cafe, because I love Instagram, girl Instagram, like I take photo every day, I up Instagram every day. So if you see like every dish of us, we have like the wood plate, like the decoration of our food is different. Every dish we kind of make it interactive. So when you interact yourself, you want to take photo and you want to share. Every tree, I have to look in every angle. Which side the flower will be bloom. You see this one, I have to like look in the angle. Okay, this one, the flower gonna bloom this way, so I have to move this side. So when people take photo, they see the angle of flower and everything in the same time.
People come to these cafes for their beautiful green spaces, But because these places are so pretty, they're also really Instagrammable. And when posts go viral, they attract more people. And what started out as, a place with a garden becomes a super interactive photo spot. By the way, Bangkok doesn't even have the craziest cafes. Chiang Mai has dozens of these, and they're all crazy. Yeah, I'm next to a giant road, and there's like barely a sidewalk here. That's Bangkok. 3. Thailand is too car-centric. Bangkok does have a relatively extensive transit system for Southeast Asia, but it's still not enough. And though Bangkok is dense in the center, it's also a sprawl. This leads to a few consequences. 1, cars are very loud, and 2, cars make Thai cities a lot hotter. And that's bad for a place with an already hot climate. Most Thais escape this heat, spending their days in malls. But cafes have now become a new alternative. In the cities, they've become these little small oases in the middle of a concrete jungle. But these larger cafes outside of the cities are an escape from the pollution, noise, and heat. And as most people in Thailand have a car, they can easily drive to these places, and sometimes they're actually more accessible because of that.
กลยุทธ์ของเราอยู่ที่สถานที่สนามกว้างๆสวนอะไรเงี้ยเป็นหลัก In the city เนี่ยคนในเมืองอ่ะหาที่จอดรถยากรถติดอีกนู่นนี่นั่นอะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะเราอยากให้ที่ของเราตรงเนี้ยในชานเมืองเนี้ยเป็นแหล่งที่คนที่ไม่ต้องเข้าไปในเมืองก็มา enjoy กับทุกอย่างได้
4. There's no borders to food here. Unlike a lot of the world, Thailand doesn't divide dining styles and meals into very different categories. In most of the world, we separate stuff like lunch and dinner, or restaurants and cafes. But in Thailand, this stuff isn't as black and white. They don't have distinctions between breakfast food versus dinner food. And all of that is to actually make things more inclusive for people to visit.
คือมาแล้วแบบว่าจบที่เดียวเลยใช่ทั้งแล้วก็ทั้งอาหารไทยอาหารยุโรปก็คือตอบโจทย์ทุกคนแบบคุณอาม่าไม่อยากกินพาสต้าก็กินอาหารไทยอะไรเงี้ยวัยรุ่นลูกหลานมาอยากกินแบบสเต็กอยากกินพาสต้าก็มีอยากกินพิซซ่าก็ได้
In the West, our general idea of a menu at a restaurant should be different from that of a cafe. But in Thailand, people here don't really see a point in that distinction. To them, it doesn't matter. I mean, why can't a cafe serve pad thai and green curry, but also really good coffee and pastries? It took me a while to wrap my head around this idea because I grew up with very clear distinctions on what is breakfast food versus what is dinner food, or what is a restaurant versus what is a cafe. So we're in the middle of Bangkok. It's steaming hot. There's loud motorbikes and tuk-tuks everywhere, and the traffic is pretty terrible today. But in this random alley, there just happens to be a cafe that you can hide away. Hopefully we can get away from all of that sound. Because these places are so beautiful, they fit really well for Instagram pictures. But the original idea was to always escape the city. And have really good pie, actually. Whoa. Shit, this is actually really good. I think we need to get another one. This unique scene of amusement cafes in Thailand just shows how much our food cultures are shaped by location and situation. Even if this kind of cafe with large open spaces and interactive designs don't originate from Thailand, they've come to flourish here more than in any other country that I've been to. And that's because Thailand had the right pieces at the right time, with its culture, infrastructure, and geographic locations all mixed in a perfect storm, allowing these places to thrive.